10 Sports Center, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the 2021 Rose Bowl and the college football playoff semifinal game between Alabama and Notre Dame, two teams of which have had outstanding seasons, especially Alabama on one side, who's 11-0 right now, and this is a team that's been very dominant over the course of the season. Meanwhile, for Notre Dame, they took their first loss of the season to Clemson in the ACC Championship, but Notre Dame is still 10-1. And they've had just about as good of a season as we've seen out of them in quite a while. Should make for quite a matchup here. We'll bring over a full game preview and prediction on this game here today, starting out with your team trends. Last game for Alabama, they beat Florida 52-46 in the SEC Championship. Quite a matchup there for Alabama, and that was quite a game for them. They played very well, and that was a good quality win. We go for Notre Dame. They lost to Clemson 10-34. Game wasn't even close from the start. Clemson all around dominated the rematch between these two teams. And even though Notre Dame beat Clemson earlier on in the season, Clemson was a whole different team at the end because they had Trevor Lawrence this time around. And, that was a tough matchup, but Alabama's going to be even tougher. So, if you can't even keep close to Clemson, that's certainly a concern for Notre Dame here. But, if you look at Alabama, this is a team that has been extremely consistent, extremely dominant over the course of this season. They're 11-0 right now with an 11-game winning streak, and they're also the top-ranked team in the nation. Meanwhile, Notre Dame is number 4, and there was a little bit of controversy there with that 4th seed for the college football playoff. Many people thought Texas A&M should be in this position, but Notre Dame got it in the end. So certainly, this is a team that is capable of being in the top 4. It's just a matter of whether or not they can win it. But they are on a 1-game losing streak, and they're 10-1. Game is going to be on Friday, January 1st, New Year's Day, 4 p.m. Eastern Time in Arlington, Texas. Spread currently says Alabama by 19.5. The Crimson Tide are very favored in this matchup according to the spread. ESPN FPI is also going with Alabama here, 81%. Vegas prediction also going on the Crimson Tide side, 44-23 being the current projected final score. So Alabama is favored here pretty heavily. Not much of a surprise considering Alabama's been, once again, as dominant as they've been all season. Here's a stat comparison for this game. Alabama's got an outstanding 50 points per game pretty much. Basically, that rounds up to 50 points. That's insane for any team in the SEC, which the SEC is not typically a very high-scoring conference. So that is an outstanding average right there. They also allow 19 points per game, which is also a great rate. They got 354 pass yards per game, 189 rush yards. Then for yards allowed, they got 243 passing and then 107 rushing. As for Notre Dame, they got 35 points per game, 18 points allowed. They got 237 pass yards a game, 217 rush yards. Then for yards allowed, they got 224 passing and then 110 rushing. So really both teams here have got their strengths. The thing is that I notice if you're comparing both of these is just Alabama's, or pretty much every area for Alabama is slightly higher. If you look at their points per game, once again, that is an outstanding ratio there between points per game and points allowed. They got 49-19, and this is an SEC team. This isn't a Group of 5 conference team. This is an Alabama team that has been extremely dominant all year long. And with Mac Jones being as good of a quarterback as he's been all season, he's going to be a very tough guy to have to beat. If you look at Mac Jones, he's put up nearly 3,800 yards on the season, 32 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's been extremely accurate as well. One of the best quarterbacks in the nation for sure, and definitely one of the most accurate ones for that matter. Mac Jones has put up over a 70% completion rate, over a 75% completion rate for that matter, which is insane. Most quarterbacks can only even hope to get 65%. So for Mac Jones to be exceeding those expectations as much as he is, it's outstanding what he's done this season for the Crimson Tide. Meanwhile, for Notre Dame, they got 35 points per game. Ian Book has put up 2,600 yards on the season, along with a decent 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions too. So Ian Book has not had a terrible season at all, but Mac Jones, Mac Jones is the better quarterback, I would say, but Ian Book's going to really need to prove himself here in this matchup if they're going to get a win against an Alabama team that has been so dominant. The thing is for Notre Dame here is they've got a great rushing core. They got Kyron Williams, who's leading that core there with over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns on the season, which is, Kyron Williams. He's put up quite a season for Notre Dame. He's been outstanding, and he's been a big reason why Notre Dame has been so successful. Looking at yards allowed, they got 224 passing and then 110 rushing. So really, this rushing core for Notre Dame has been very good on their side, and that's going to be huge in stopping Najee Harris. But for Alabama too, they also have a great rushing defense, only allowing 107 yards per game, and that's why this matchup is going to be so good here. Here's some key points for this one. Alabama has been the most dominant team all season in the nation. There's pretty much no question there. If you look at how they've played all season, they've put up an average of 50 points per game. They blew out LSU 55-17, blew out Auburn 42-13, and it looked like they're going to blow out Florida, but Florida, give them credit for that because, even though Alabama put up 52 points against the Gators, Florida still kept on. on their side. But still, it's been quite a season for Alabama. And this is a team, I mean, Alabama's team this season is just as good as I think I've seen out of Alabama in recent history. I mean, the past couple of decades for the Crimson Tide have been insane. I mean, this is a team that's won so many national championships. And for Alabama, I think that could easily continue on into this season. I mean, if you look at them this year, this is about as good as we've seen out of Alabama this season. Like, this is a team that's been so talented and so consistent. Notre Dame on the other side has shown inconsistencies, and that's kind of the problem for them. I mean, if you look at them, really ever since that win against Clemson on November 7th, I mean, when they beat them in double overtime, this is a Notre Dame team that has slowly digressed from there. I mean, if you look at them, they allowed 31 points to Boston College. They beat North Carolina in a close game, but they also allowed 21 points to Syracuse, and then they get blown out by Clemson. So it almost looks like Notre Dame has gotten worse over the course of the season, and even though this Notre Dame team is still 10-1, like, I mean, they've allowed a lot of points to some teams that they certainly should be only allowing 10 points to. So, I mean, for Notre Dame here, Notre Dame's a great team, don't get me wrong, but it's just coming into a matchup against an Alabama team that is as dominant and as great as they are. I mean, that is not a good sign for things to come in this matchup. But how each team would win in this situation, really, the thing is for Notre Dame is you cannot let Alabama. I mean, you cannot let Alabama score 2 to 3 touchdowns in the first quarter on you. I mean, you got to keep it close. Like Alabama, I mean, we've seen this all season out of the Crimson Tide. They get out to a really fast start, and they just cruise on from there. I mean, for Notre Dame here, you're going to have to play very well defensively. Like, this is a team that's going to have to play. Like, Notre Dame is going to have to really lock down on defense and make sure that Mac Jones is not able to throw for more than 300 yards. I mean, if Mac Jones is able to throw a couple of touchdowns in this game, like, this game could easily be over with, because Alabama is just as dominant of a team as they are. And if they get momentum, they can be very dangerous. And for Notre Dame, you just got to hang on in this game. Like, you just got to make sure that you keep close with Alabama. You can't let them get a big lead on you, because that would be a terrible situation. For Alabama, though, I mean, it's pretty much the opposite for them. Alabama's just got to make sure that they can get a couple of touchdowns right off the bat, make sure that they shut down Notre Dame early, and that should be the key to success. And I do see that somewhat happening in this game. I think Alabama gets the win. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that the Crimson Tide will win. Like, honestly, I would be stunned if Notre Dame won this game. Like, it would be a huge surprise, one of the biggest upset wins of the season, in my opinion. But Alabama, I'm going to have them leading at the half, 21-10 being the score. And then in the final, it's going to be 42-24. We're going to see Alabama win this game by about 20. I do think Alabama is going to be really close to covering. So if you're going to be betting on this game, I think that you should be safe with predicting or projecting Alabama to cover here, because I think Alabama is definitely going to score a lot of points in this game. Alabama should score at least 40, in my opinion. I definitely think that we will hit the over as well. But Notre Dame is a great team. There's no doubt with that. I mean, if you look at Notre Dame all season, they've kept close with a lot of opponents. But the thing is that Notre Dame is kind of at a loss of momentum right now. Like, ever since that win against Clemson on November 7th, once again, this is a team that has slowly lost momentum as the season's gone on. And coming into a game where you got to play, as good as you ever have against an Alabama team that has been as good as they've been in a long time. Like, Alabama is they're going to come out of the game, they're going to score a lot of points. And I just think they kind of get away from Notre Dame in the end. Final score is going to be 42-24. Probably is going to be 75% towards the Crimson Tide as well. But anyway, that wraps up my prediction on this game. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this one. Score predictions, all of that, let me know down below. I appreciate you guys all watching this video and sticking around. If you enjoyed it, slap a like on it, subscribe as well, as it really helps with the channel. I'd really appreciate that. But once again, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you all later.